You want to learn how to code, right? You start watching a 10-hour video and you're not understanding anything. You're doing it wrong. Programming is like speaking. When you were little, you first learn to speak and then learn the language. Well, in programming, it's the same. First you learn some basic concepts and then you apply them to any programming language. So today I'm going to teach you 8 basic programming concepts, so after watching this 6-minute video, you'll be able to learn any language easily. Let's go! Instructions and code blocks. Programming is basically giving instructions to a computer. For example, when you're building a Lego, you go instruction by instruction, right? Placing the pieces in a correct order to achieve a goal. See, programming is basically the same. You give some instructions to the computer, which follows them in an order, and that's basically a program. So, these instructions are grouped into what are called code blocks, and they are normally delimited by curly braces. Variables. Variables are like boxes with a label, and these boxes inside contain some data that can be used later in the program. There are 2 steps to using a variable: declaration and assignment. Declaring a variable is like creating a box and labeling the box. Let's call our box or variable name. Now we have a box, but it's empty. We need to put some data inside, and that step is called assignment. Assignment is basically putting something inside the box, which in programming is giving a value to a variable. For example, we can put Paul inside the name box. By doing the declaration and the assignment, we are left with a variable name with the name Paul. These values that we can assign to a variable are normally reduced to 3 main types or primitives: numbers, strings which are like text, or booleans which are true or false. Arithmetic operations. We can use values and variables to perform different arithmetic operations. Today I'm going to teach you 5, which are addition with the plus symbol, subtraction with the minus symbol, multiplication with the asterisk symbol, division with the slash, and modulo with the percentage sign. Most programming languages also allow joining 2 strings with the plus sign as if it was an addition. Comparisons. Aside from the arithmetic operations, we also have comparison operators, which allows us to compare 2 values or 2 variables and they return a boolean. Today I'm going to show you 6 of these. Equals to, which is done with 2 equal signs, not equals to, which is done with an exclamation mark and an equal sign, greater than, which is done with the, greater than symbol which you learned from math since you were a child, greater than or equals to, which is adding an equal sign at the end, less than, which is made with the, less than symbol from math, and to end, less than or equal to, which is adding the equal sign at the end. If and else. In programming, we have 2 magic words: if, which is basically the conditional if, and else, which is like otherwise. For example, how would you tell someone to bring an umbrella if it's raining? Very easy. If it's raining, if, bring an umbrella. Otherwise, else, don't bring it. This is pure English, but what if we want to translate this to code? It would be something like this, where we have a boolean, it's raining, and then the if taking the conditional, it's raining, and if it's false, else. We can even combine else and if to do multiple checks. Like if temperature is greater than 30, bring a hat, else if temperature greater than 20, bring sunglasses, and else bring a jacket. Arrays or list. Arrays or lists are variables that can store many values in a single variable. For example, if you had to make a shopping list, you wouldn't create 20 variables to save each thing, right? Well, that's what lists are for, to save all the strings that you need for your shopping list under a single name or variable. Once you have your array or list created, you can access the values inside using the indexes or positions. Be careful because computers start to count from 0. So if you have an array, let's say the days of the week, to access the first element, you use the position or index 0, Tuesday on position 1, and so on. You can think of it as, what is the first element of my list? You enter the number, 0, and it returns Monday. Loops. Loops are used to repeat instructions several times. It's like telling the computer, do this 5 times. There are 2 different types of loops. The for loop, which is basically repeating a code block a certain amount of times. For example, if you want to say hello 5 times, you tell the computer for 5 times, say hello. This type of loop is also very useful for iterating through lists, like the example we have on screen. If we have 3 days in a list, then for each day in the list, say the day. Then we have while loops, that basically repeats a code block while, hence the name, a condition is true. For example, if we want to count to 3, we would create a counter variable that starts at 0, and while the counter is less than 3, we will say the number the counter is at, and we will add 1 to the counter. Functions. A function is a set of instructions that can be reused. This way, you can avoid repeating code and organizing it much better. You can think of them as like being a recipe. You give it a name, some ingredients that in programming we call them parameters, and return a result. For example, if for some reason you hate the plus symbol and you want to create a function to sum, we could create a function called sum that has two parameters, a and b, which are basically variables that you can use inside the function. We will assume that these are two numbers, and then just create the code block where we will create a variable result summing those two numbers, and then return the result at the end. Further down, instead of using the plus symbol to add two numbers, we can call the add function, pass in the two numbers we want to add, and total will be what the function returns.